Hello everybody, welcome back to Historic Murders of Portland, Season 3. I'm in downtown. I'm about 2 blocks away from where I got off the bus. I already heard several people screaming maniacally at each other, and a bunch of cop cars stopped back there, so it's just another day in the city. But I'm trying to get to 2nd Avenue in Yamhill, at least in that vicinity. I'm now on 2nd. I don't know. Taylor's next? God, I haven't been in downtown for a while. I can't remember which any of the streets are. Yeah, I am coming towards Yamhill. Oh, that was fast. Anyway, I've got for you a case from 1915 to get things going here. And, it's a fresh episode of Historic Murders of Portland. That's all. So, directly behind me, this is 2nd Avenue and Yamhill. Yamhill is the crossing street right here. And back in 1915, in the vicinity of this intersection, I want to say it might have even been roughly where this Moy building is. I don't know, it might have been right here. It was in the vicinity of this intersection. I'm not even dead certain it was actually right at the intersection. There was a place known as the Arian Hall, A-R-I-O-N. I'm assuming it was pronounced Arian, or Arian, maybe it was a long O. And there was a murder that happened here that's a little bit shrouded in mystery for a lot of reasons. And one is it was a crime perpetrated by a Japanese immigrant upon another Japanese immigrant in this town. And, usually if it was one race, a person of one race that wasn't white attacking a person of the same race that obviously also wasn't white, people of Portland didn't really care. Now, if it was a Japanese person killing a white person, that would have been the news of the year. There would have been, chaos would have ensued in this city. So, because it was a Japanese person attacking another Japanese person, there really wasn't a lot reported on it, even though it was a murder case. It was a very crazy case as well. There was, it seemed abundantly clear that this is one of those cases where when it happened, the authorities were like, let's just get someone, get them on it, and then just, let's get it over with. I'm definitely going to need some help from my trusty notes on this, because we have multiple people of Japanese descent involved. And of course, again, because they weren't white people, the newspaper reporters never really cared to get anybody's name right. So the actual victim in this case, I've encountered this a few times in my videos, but these old cases, the actual victim in the case, I'm not 100% sure what his name was, because the newspapers gave about 10 different spellings of the guy's last name. So I've come to the conclusion that the victim's name was a guy named Riosaku Kobinata. I saw him as Kobinana, Kobihana, Kobihata. There was so many different ways that the name was spelled. And for our sake, Kobinata, I'm already having to reference it again, was at this Arian Hall that was located here at 2nd and Yamhill. And that's something that people forget, because they think of the Chinatown area as where pretty much anybody who wasn't white, that's where they all congregated. But they forget that a lot of people of especially Asian nationality, they also had a very large populace in the Old Town area, which we're right smack dab in the middle of. So it'd be understandable that there would be a kind of, I guess it was kind of like a theater. It was a hall, Arian Hall. It was kind of like a theater, and it was a prominent gathering place for local Japanese immigrants. So, Riosaku Kobinata was here. It's December 6th, 1915. And, one of the things we don't have in this case, again, all I found on this case was a smattering of newspaper articles. It was probably a case that, if there wasn't a murder involved, they probably wouldn't have really cared to even report on it in the local papers. What the hell did the, 90% white populace care? But another Japanese man by the name of Nakano, Inosuke Nakano, again, I'm assuming that's his name. At least his name was published a little bit more consistently, the same spelling, same pronunciation. Inosaku. I'm sorry, Nakano. This is my first video of the day. I'm always a little rusty on the first one. I'm just going to try to call them by their last names. So, Nakano reportedly charges in to the Arian Hall, located on this block, and shoots at Kobinata. He drops dead. And that's kind of thought to be the beginning and the end of the whole thing. That's it. Nakano killed Kobinata. And, it seems like a pretty open and shut case. He gets nabbed. They're going to put him on trial. He's going to get busted. It should only be like a 30-minute long trial. They're going to take care of this. Everything will be fine, I guess. However, there's reports of Nakano showing up with several other men, at least 4 or 5 other men. Witnesses said that they saw one of these men standing, loitering by the entrance of the hall with a knife in his possession. Now, I don't know how big that knife was, but that was what people were reporting. So, again, there was never a real motive reported in this crime why, these men would storm this building and attack this one particular individual, but it seemed like they were determined that this would go down the way it did, and that if somehow Kobinata got away, there was a guy loitering by the entrance waiting to attack him there. And these other men that showed up with Nakano, they were apprehended, they were arrested, they were all given 90-day sentences, and then those sentences were immediately suspended, which is incredibly suspicious. I mean, they all showed up with this guy who then seemingly goes in alone and kills this other person. So I think again, local authorities didn't really care. They wanted the case to get taken care of as quickly as possible, and the more people you get mixed up in it, the more time you have to spend, the more investigation you have to do. I don't think they wanted to deal with it, to be honest. I don't think they wanted to deal with it. And so, yeah, these 90-day sentences that these guys got were suspended, even though it was obvious that they were there as accomplices. But that's not the end in terms of accomplices. I got another name for you. So, while they're doing their investigation, one of the things that they discover, in terms of Mr. Nakano, is, he's supposed to be acting alone. I mean, in terms of doing the actual deed. He had accomplices waiting around to help him, but, by initial reports, it seemed like these guys didn't do anything. Well, it's discovered that when Nakano is arrested, he has a handgun on him. But 2 problems. One, the handgun he has can't be traced to the bullets that were involved in the shooting. And beyond that, there were 2 different kinds of ammunition from 2 different types of guns discovered at the crime scene. So already you have pretty damaging information that not only had there was either 2 people involved, or there was one guy going in, super CIA agent, action film style, came in and just had one in each hand and was just going ballistic, and there just happened to be 2 different types of guns. But it's strange because it seemed like an open and shut case that Nakano came in and shot Kobinata dead, and yet his gun doesn't match the evidence at the scene. That brings us another fellow, a Mr. Never got a full first name, just a K. Kei Komatsu. Kei Komatsu was brought in, and he was actually brought in as a witness in the case. He was somebody that was supposed to be able to help them put the finger on Nakano and say, yeah, that's the guy that did it. Well, it was discovered that one of the types of ammunition discovered at the crime scene that had been fired was, I believe, 41 caliber. Yeah, 41 caliber ammunition, at least one bullet found at the scene. And when authorities went to talk to Mr. Komatsu, he just happened to own a firearm that was a 41 caliber weapon. So while he was initially grabbed as a potential witness, he suddenly became a suspect. And I found nothing further after that discovery. I found nothing further to suggest that he was tried, that he was brought on as an accomplice, as a potential shooter, even though, you know, here's a guy that's the same descent who was there. You know, he was a witness, so he was there in the building, and he just happens to own a weapon that fired the exact type of ammunition that was found at the scene. That can't be said for Mr. Nakano. So, very strange case, and I don't think we'll ever know fully what happened at the Arian Theater, or Hall. That again was, I mean, this is Willamette Block. This is from the 1880s. This building's from 1890. Even this building looks pre-1915, so I'm guessing the Arian Hall was either a little bit off this intersection, or it might have been located here. This is a much newer building over here. Because we've got Centennial Block over here. Like, almost every building near this intersection, aside from this one, was probably here before 1915. But the newspapers report that it was at 2nd and Yamhill, and this, yes, 2nd and Yamhill, where this crime happened. And I don't think we're ever really gonna know for certain, you know, exactly what happened, because there was all this doubt and all this suspicion. And I don't know. It seemed like the authorities were a lot more interested in just getting the case taken care of and shut down, and just getting it out of the way. You know, because with all this troubling information, Nakano still went on trial for the crime. And he was actually acquitted, which is pretty impressive for that time period, and being a Japanese immigrant. And obviously the police didn't care to address the crime, you know, to the best of their ability. But again, you have multiple guns. You have evidence of 2 different shooters. And they can't prove that he has a gun that's the caliber that was used at the crime scene. I mean, if that's not reasonable doubt, I do not know what the hell is. So he was released, but then, you know, almost as quickly as he was acquitted, he was immediately arrested again, because in this fracas in the shooting, there was another individual named H. Miyazaki who was also he was wounded. He didn't die at the scene, but he was also wounded. So they couldn't get Nakano for, you know, straight murder. So they arrested him and tried to have him convicted on the lesser charge of attempted murder of Miyazaki. And what's crazy is, when all is said and done, he was found guilty of assault with attempt to kill against Miyazaki. But, I mean, whoever was doing the shooting, whoever shot and killed Riosaku Kobinata, I mean, they're the same people that were shooting at Miyazaki, so how do you say that someone's not guilty of shooting one, but then guilty of shooting another if it's the same event, the same people are involved? So I think, like in a lot of these cases, I think the people wanted appeasement, the authorities, the legal system, the judicial system around here, I think they just wanted it off their books. They wanted to get rid of this case that they just couldn't get, you know, they wanted to get a conviction. They were going to get a conviction for something and then kind of let it go. So they got Nagano for assault with attempt to kill, but not for the actual murder that took place. And as far as I could see in the information I looked at, I couldn't find, any later articles about it, so it seems like there was never actually a conviction of any specific person in the murder of Riosaku Kobinata. Sorry, I'm still having to recheck his name every time I say it. It's hard enough just remembering their last names, but I mean, by that account, this is Nakano's the only person that I could see that went on trial for this crime, and he was never convicted, and there was never anything else. So I don't think anybody was ever convicted for that murder. And the last piece of information I found, which is Nagano's attorneys trying to appeal the decision, because again there was so much reasonable doubt in this case, and they tried to get it appealed, claiming there was all kinds of errors and problems and irregularities, and of course there was. They were, the system in this city was dead set on getting this guy on something to appease, the people, I guess. And literally, it was reported in the newspaper. They brought up the question about whether, Nakano, even, whether he was even involved. And, obviously, if there was another gun involved, did somebody else show up with the intent to... There was all this stuff. Like, it was obvious that there was another shooter, so how can you say this one guy is responsible for wounding anyone? How do we know the other guy, or guys, weren't the ones that were primarily responsible? And literally, the judge told them, this is how, dead set they were getting Nakano for something. When, all this stuff was brought up by his attorneys, the people that are hired to defend him and to do what they can to, help him, the judge told them, in quotes, he said essentially all this stuff was none of their business. To the judges of a guy they just convicted for something that they couldn't even prove he was guilty for. It's none of his judge's business, the irregularities that happened in this case. So it is a case where there's a lot of issues here, a lot of questionable activity, questionable motives, questionable conduct. And again, it really is. It's another example of what happens, when you, it's the olden days and you live in a city like Portland and you aren't white. They don't care about it, That's still prominent in a lot of parts of the, the world, this country. If you're a certain color, a lot of people, or at least a lot fewer people, don't care about your rights and whether you were innocent of something. I mean, they tried to blame the massive 1872 and 73 fire on Chinese laundromat proprietors. And, the Chinese population in this city faced massive repercussions after that information was spread. And now, it's still kind of a mystery exactly what happened, but now, years later, people are of the pretty consistent opinion that it was more likely a white person set a fire near a Chinese establishment to make it look like some local Chinese started a fire. So it was almost like a prank to get people pissed at the local Chinese populace. And in 1973, almost the whole entire city burned to the ground. Pretty much all of this through here, what was here was completely reduced to rubble. So, that's how the city of Portland functions. So it should unfortunately be a little surprise that, a Japanese immigrant, who's on the scene when a shooting happens, maybe he does it, maybe he doesn't. They were going to get him on something, whether it was by genuine investigative means, honest means, whatever, or through total misrepresentation of what happened. They were going to get this guy on it. And that's it. That is episode 1 of this fresh season 3 of Historic Murders of Portland. Essentially, the way I'm doing seasons now is I usually do these videos in flourishes. Like, I'll have 3 or 4 days over a 1 to 2 week period where I go out and shoot a bunch of episodes, and then I take a long period off, like 2 months. So pretty much when those lulls happen, that's essentially the end of one season. So I'm out, I'm doing this more again, so this is the start of season 3. I haven't even started season 2 at this point, so there's a lot more episodes to come. So that's kind of how I'm doing it. And all that said, from Fringe of Waterfront Park with my buddies here, scattering around, munching. This has been Steve the Amateur Historian. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.